Here's how Epstein broke the internet. He's meeting with the founder of 4chan and his quest to profit of the end of democracy. Because Epstein, I guess, knew everybody, everywhere, all at once around the world and pulled all the strings. Apparently, he also was the culprit behind the anti-trans hysteria that we have to deal with right now. The anti-trans climate that we have found ourselves in. Apparently, Mr. Epstein had some doing in that as well. It's just incredible. And by incredible, I mean horrifyingly terrible. I spent most of my 20s covering what we now call the global populism wave. I got my start in the newsrooms writing 4chan explainers, trawling through school shooter manifestos, and eventually that work took me around the world. I followed far-right soccer hooligan Tommy Robinson as he marched through the streets of London in the weeks leading up to Brexit, monitored 4chan users in France and Germany as they tried to hijack their respective elections, attended Facebook's election party in Rome, interviewed Bolsominion YouTubers in Brazil, went to Estonia to learn about how the country was protecting itself from Russian-led disinformation campaigns, and even went back to the source, interviewing Japanese bloggers in Tokyo about 2chan or Futaba channel, the site that inspired 4chan. Jesus, Futaba channel. This is going way back. I had a front row seat to the collapse of the global order, and I believed at the time that I understood what was going on. In the aftermath of the Great Recession, far-right extremists, aided and amplified by Russia's internet research agency and funded by Republican dark money, infiltrated fringe online spaces. They weaponized disaffected young men and used sites like Reddit and 4chan to organize a flood of content that influenced the unthinking algorithms on larger platforms like Facebook and YouTube. But there were always holes in that explanation that I could never quite account for. A feeling that, one that can be quite dangerous for a journalist trying not to fall into the void of conspiracy theories. That there was something bigger going on. And while I can't say we have the complete story yet, it does increasingly feel like I was actually, without knowing it, following Jeffrey Epstein around the world the whole time. I mean, I gotta say that Epstein definitely had a presence all over the world. He definitely has had a presence in Estonia and many other countries. It's incredible just how many tentacles in how many places that guy has had. Based on the newest tranche of emails and texts released by the Justice Department this weekend, Epstein at the very least believed that he was orchestrating the downfall of the global order in the 2010s. I mean, he definitely knew all the politicians. He definitely knew all the people. There are politicians in Estonia and other countries that are now placing their resignations because they have been named in the newest leaks. In Slovakia, one politician placed a resignation because he said that he does not want to embarrass Fico with the allegations. In June 2016, he emailed venture capitalist, early Facebook investor, and Palantir founder Peter Thiel, writing, "Brexit is just the beginning." He then laid out the most succinct mission statement we currently have for what Epstein was trying to accomplish. "Return to tribalism," he wrote. "Counter to globalization. Amazing new alliances. You and I both agreed zero interest rates were too high. And as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much easier than finding them the next bargain." Epstein's message gives us a glimpse, one we were never meant to see, of a shadowy world of international espionage, deregulated finance, far-right politics, eugenist race science, information warfare, and unfathomably intricate human trafficking networks. And as we know, Epstein, if anything, was an expert in human trafficking. That is his main spiel. That is his main thing. Epstein wanted to break the internet and eventually democracy to cover his tracks and cash in on the chaos. Here's everything we know so far about how he planned to do it. World of Warcraft and the downfall of democracy. I guess the world order was to be Azeroth, and Epstein wanted to be the Scourge, like in Warcraft 3. Warcraft 3 was the one before World of Warcraft. Remember? Remember Warcraft 3? I remember Warcraft 3. Based on the documents we have access to, these were twin obsessions for Epstein: manipulating that we see online and finding digital alternatives to traditional finance. So, Bitcoin, I guess, BitCurrency. During the last years of his life, these two ideas would dovetail into one project, building a far-right takeover of Europe with Stephen Bannon. Following his 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution of a child, Epstein spent a considerable amount of time managing his online reputation, and the fact that he was still allowed to work. Again, Epstein was allowed to work during the day, and he was just asked that he would return to prison at night. In 2013, he had a list of instructions for managing his digital footprint that were meant to be forwarded to the new SEO tech person, and a 2014 invoice shows that he was spending $1,000 a month to reinforce positive listings. In November 2010, he received an email from visual arts Al Sekel with the subject line, "Hacking Wiki again." Okay. Sekel said he was fighting with Wikipedia editors about whether or not Epstein's page should be included in the site's sex offender category. Sekel also claimed that he was recording the IP addresses of editors that pushed back, hacked the site to block them. Bannon first, that's the fact that they needed to hack Wikipedia to clean Epstein. There's no cleaning Epstein's image. It's literally impossible. And I feel like even at that point, it was already kind of a doomed to fail mission to try to rehabilitate his image. Bannon first enters the picture when Epstein took an interest in World of Warcraft. Epstein was close with Brock Pierce, cryptocurrency entrepreneur, who co-founded the stablecoin Tether. In 2001, Pierce founded Internet Gaming Entertainment, or IGE, a company that tried to build a trading market for in-game currency for video games like WoW. In 2007, Pierce was replaced at IGE by Bannon, and in November 2016, Epstein's longtime accountant Richard Kahn emailed Epstein a Wired article about Bannon's role at IGE. In-game currency especially was a fixation for him. He emailed former Activision CEO Bobby Kotick in May 2013 a long diatribe about using virtual items and in-game currency to co-opt the existing video game industry. Epstein knew everybody. Bobby Kotick is his own type of monster within the gaming industry, a very immoral piece of shit. So I guess zero shock that Bobby Kotick would know Epstein. Somehow I'm not surprised by this revelation at all. Not in the slightest. And replace traditional education. He seemed to think that you could inspire kids to learn better by gamifying it. Journalist Michael Wolff, who advised Epstein on media strategy, would formally connect Bannon and Epstein in October 2017, 2 days after the New York Times published the investigation into director Harvey Weinstein, which jump-started the Me Too movement. Bannon and Epstein would message often about Me Too, referring to it by its other name, Time's Up, At one point, the two men brainstormed how to use cryptocurrency to fund a populist nationalist coalition that could stave off Time's Up for the next decade plus. Of course, they would be tied to Me Too. Again, no surprise there. And it seems like both Bannon and Epstein had already independently figured out the perfect place to build that coalition. 4chan. Yeah, all roads lead to 4chan, it seems. Epstein met Moot. One of the central internet mysteries of the last 15 years is why 4chan creator Christopher Poole reversed course in 2011 and brought back the site's politics board, which is called POL, or politically incorrect. It would become the staging ground for Gamergate in the 2016 Trump campaign and far-right populism wave that swept the world in the back half of the 2010s. A version of POL was attempted 2 times before it finally stuck. First was an N, which was meant to be a section for news content, which ultimately became the transportation boards in 2008. And then again in 2010, when Poole launched New, largely as a way to quarantine the overwhelming amount of support on the site for Ron Paul's 2008 presidential campaign. Poole shut down New in January 2011, telling users at the time, as for New, anybody who used it knows exactly why it was removed. When I re-added the board last year, I made a note that if it devolved into Stormfront, I'd remove it. Stormfront is one of the oldest neo-Nazi communities on the web. So it has never made much sense as to why Poole would ban New for being a racist hellhole, and then barely a year later launch POL, a board specifically designed to be a racist hellhole, but buried inside the newest batch of files related to the Epstein investigation is a possible hint as to what made Poole change his mind. He met with Epstein the day before POL was created because, of course, again, Epstein knew absolutely everybody. They were all in cahoots, it seems. A pretty global anti-globalist project, if I do say so myself. On October 20th, 2011, Boris Nikolic, a venture capitalist and former advisor to Bill Gates, sent Epstein the Wikipedia page for Christopher Poole, writing, "There is a cool kid that you should meet." 4 days later, Nikolic followed up asking Epstein, "How did you like? He's very sensitive, so be gentle." Poole's username for years was Moot or Moot. "I liked him a lot. I drove him home. He's very bright," Epstein replied. Nikolic went on to write that he will be a friend and that he is one of the greatest hackers. There you have it. Also, apparently Bill Gates and Epstein had a weird falling out, and Bill Gates banned him from Xbox Live because that happened, apparently. According to Epstein's emails, that appears to be the only time Epstein successfully made contact with Poole. It seems like organizing a simple lunch meeting with Poole was a genuine nightmare for Epstein and his team. Nikolic said he planned to meet Poole again in early November, and according to a reminder Epstein said, it seems like he planned to meet Poole at the same time. There's also a separate email thread from October 31st with an unidentified correspondent where the redacted sender takes credit for introducing Nikolic and Poole, writing, "I introduced Boris to Chris Poole and got them talking, encouraged Boris to get to know him. Boris said the two of you really hit it off." Epstein had subsequent meetings scheduled with Poole on November 23rd, January 27th, 2012, which Poole cancelled last minute. And again in February, there are nearly 100 emails going back and forth about how Poole kept flaking on them. Well, I guess in 2012, I guess Epstein was at that point already a convicted pedophile, right? For soliciting a minor for prostitution. So I guess it would make sense that people would start flaking on him. But Epstein didn't forget about 4chan. We can't say for sure if he was an active user, but in 2017, he sent Karina Shuliak, his girlfriend at the time, a 4chan link containing Five Nights at Freddy's porn. What? This whole Epstein thing just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Who is this Karina Shuliak that was his girlfriend? Meanwhile, in March 2012, Bannon, following the death of conservative blogger Andrew Breitbart, was installed as the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News. In 2014, 4chan's video game board, V, and Paul started lighting up about the Gamergate conspiracy theory. Milo Yiannopoulos, then a young tech writer for Breitbart, would transform Gamergate from fringe message board drama into the cornerstone of the global far-right movement by repackaging it in articles optimized for Facebook traffic. Oh, Milo Yiannopoulos, a very familiar name, if there ever was one, which was perfect timing because Epstein was beginning to work his way into Silicon Valley. The international pedophile cabal also thought Elon Musk was a loser. Oh my God. Epstein was not always a creature of the internet. In 2010, Hollywood producer Barry Josephson asked Epstein if he knew Silicon Valley investor Ron Conaway, to which Epstein replied, "No, Silicon Valley is another world." But in 2012, he was already starting to make inroads in San Francisco because, of course, his tentacles needed to reach everywhere. He needed to have contacts everywhere. In one of the hundreds of newly released emails between Epstein and Elon Musk, Musk introduced Epstein to Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis. It's unclear if the two ever formally communicated, but Epstein continued to keep tabs on Hassabis. As for Musk, contrary to what he's been saying for the last few years, he was a regular presence in Epstein's inbox. Musk's daughter corroborated some of the details about Musk's interactions with Epstein after the new emails came to light, but seems like Musk was mostly a path towards bigger fish. Interesting. It is interesting that currently the richest guy in the world was just a pathway to bigger fish. In 2012, Epstein asked British investor Ian Osborne to set up a meeting between him and Thiel and Zuckerberg. Osborne also tried to connect Epstein with Apple's Tim Cook, and in 2013, Epstein was recorded telling former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak that he should try and work with Palantir. However, the earliest actual emails between Epstein and Thiel released so far are from 2014. In an email in July 2015, Epstein connected Thiel with Sergei Belyakov, Russia's the Deputy Minister of Economic Development, because, of course, Epstein had a lot of contacts in Russia. That, of course, is also very, it seems, obvious at this point. And alleged Russian intelligence operative. In an email to Thiel, a month after that, Epstein alludes to a visit at his Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. In 2015, Epstein told medical researcher and author Peter Attia, who was just named as new CBS contributor by Barry Weiss, whose wife Nellie Bowles also corresponded with Epstein, that he was having dinner with Musk, Thiel, and Zuckerberg. And in 2016, Epstein offered to share the expenses for Thiel's lawsuit against Gawker, which would eventually bankrupt the outlet. During this time, Epstein was trying to worm his way into the world of science and technology by using his connections to then director of MIT Media Lab, Joy Ito, former Harvard President Larry Summers, and LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, who Osborne in an email refers to as Fatty. Ito emailed Epstein in 2015 to tell him that he used gift funds to underwrite the Media Lab's management of Bitcoin Score software. Epstein was also an early investor in Coinbase. Oh, and in July 2013, it also showed Epstein what an anime waifu body pillow was. Because, of course, a pervert such as Epstein would be interested in body pillows. And then Epstein dreams of statecraft were supercharged when he finally officially met Bannon in 2017. Epstein's electioneering. What is happening? Thanks to Russia's... Oh God, Russia. Of course, Russia's involved in all this. Thanks to Russia's notorious troll farm, the Internet Research Agency, the success of huge social platforms like Facebook and YouTube, and the frenzy of the Trump campaign in the US and Brexit in the UK, Epstein's interest in overt statecraft went into overdrive. Rather than the more traditional espionage he was believed to be engaged in before the social media boom. But it's important to know that he was not some kind of political mastermind, no. He was a human trafficker, first and foremost. Based on the emails to which we currently have access, populist politics, online disinformation, cyber warfare, and cryptocurrency were all just scaffolding for his work as a financier and sex trafficker. There you go. He was a sex trafficker first and foremost. A way to destabilize the global order, make connections with the world's elites, and continue enriching himself and preying on vulnerable young girls. Apparently, Polish children were kidnapped, and there's a new group investigating who helped Epstein in the kidnapping of Polish children to be abused. Reading through his messages, it's clear that he was someone who was learning to speak the language of social media and far-right populism. At the same time, everyone else was. In 2014, a redacted correspondent suggested he had the work of a far-right Russian philosopher. What, Dugin? In 2015, Epstein allegedly started funding a French-language white nationalist YouTube channel, and he and Bannon were plotting a far-right blitz on Europe's upcoming elections. I wonder which countries. I have to ask, which countries were they trying to blitz? In March 2018, Bannon bragged that he was now advisor to far-right Italian politician Matteo Salvini, Germany's far-right alternative for Germany, AfD. Of course, that does not surprise me. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, and UK Brexiter Nigel Farage. He also said that he could pressure them to shut down any crypto legislation or anything else we want. In July 2018, Colin Estelle, who's the French language white nationalist YouTube channel, they're not named, unfortunately. I would like to know that as well. Maybe if I click here on this link. I'm in the Epstein files now. Where were you doing in 2016? Maybe this? Jean-Francois. So I guess it's this person. Yeah, that's the content creator that has been supported with the Epstein files. No, I don't know him. Who is he? I actually don't know this person. I'm not familiar. Were they banned from you? Was it's love, you idiot? Was this person's YouTube terminated or something? In July 2018, Epstein told Bannon that he was wrestling with how to get a team of hackers for Bannon and wanted to use a zero-day exploit to target crypto wallets and voting booths. And in another email that month, Epstein also alleged that Marine Le Pen's far-right Front National Party was financed by Russia. And over the next 6 months, the men continued to scheme with each other over text. In March 2019, Ron Larsen texted Epstein, trying to lift Shinzo Abe on world stage as key to Brazil's Bolsonaro. Orbán, Salvini, and Epstein texted Bannon, now at the pyramid, referring to the Louvre pyramid, with the entire government. What are your plans? This YouTuber also had a girlfriend who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. So nobody ever learned what happened to that mysterious girlfriend. She just poof, disappeared. I guess that is kind of morbidly interesting. Unanswered questions. He called her Mama JF. That's very disturbing, actually. That is a very disturbing piece of information. Were Epstein and Bannon really doing a crypto-funded far-right coalition of pro-Russian dictators across Europe? It seems that way. Or were they just LARPing as kingmakers with each other over email? And does the distinction ever matter if other powerful figures seem to believe in their project? It is nearly impossible to not get pulled deeper down the rabbit hole while reading through Epstein's emails, because whether or not he did directly influence elections across the globe, he was trying to, and he had the means and the access to believe he could. But even if we stick to what we know from previous investigations and what we can see in his newly released emails, the reality stated plainly is frankly insane, but these are the facts. Yeah, there was a very well-connected, very powerful sex trafficker that tried to affect elections all over the world. It's insanity, quite honestly. Epstein, possibly the most prolific sex trafficker in human history. Yeah, I think so. It seems like Epstein was actually the most prolific sex trafficker in human history. Spent the last decade of his life investing in technology that would help Russia, as he wrote in 2013 email, leapfrog the global community by reinventing the financial system of the 21st century. He was fascinated by websites like 4chan and technology like Bitcoin, and was personally invested in the success of far-right politicians in the US and Europe. He believed he was months away from ushering in a new world order that would allow him to continue with his monstrous passion projects like creating a super race of children with his own... What? What the fuck? I'm sorry. This feels like some super villain plot, like a movie or an anime. I'm sorry, what? He believed he was months away from ushering in a new world order that would allow him to continue with his monstrous passion projects like creating a super race of children with his own DNA. Did I misread that? This cannot be real. Was this actually a thing? And building fascist nation states to manage overpopulation and climate collapse. Holy shit. I have to... Is there an article on that? On him trying to create super children with his DNA? Epstein reportedly hoped to develop super race of humans with his DNA. What? Registered sex offender hoped to seed human race with his DNA by impregnating 20 women at a time, New York Times reports. Just 20? Wait, he hoped to seed the human race with his DNA by just impregnating 20 women? Like what? Every hour? Every day? Every 20 women? That's Jeffrey Epstein, that the wealthy financier accused of sex trafficking, plans to develop an improved super race of humans using genetic engineering and artificial intelligence, according to the New York... What? This cannot be real. This cannot possibly be real. But then again, it seems like he was one of the most connected people in the world. He was actually one of the most powerful people in the world. And this is just so bizarre. This seems like a super villain plot. I'm going to elevate the human race by spreading my DNA. In the aftermath of his 2008 sex trafficking conviction, Epstein hoped to seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating women at his ranch in New Mexico, one of his properties where young women, including minors, were allegedly abused, the newspaper reported in a major investigation. Musk has similar plan. Musk also wants to spread his DNA throughout the human race. Though there is little evidence the scheme ever progressed beyond fantasy, prominent scientists, including the late Stephen Hawking, regularly attended dinners, lunches, and conferences held by Epstein, the Times said. Holy shit, who was not involved with Epstein, okay? It increasingly feels like it would be easier to list all the people that were not involved with Epstein. Is it like the language guy was involved with Epstein? And by that I mean, I'm blanking out on his name. The manufacturer consent guy, Chomsky. Chomsky was implicated with Epstein. Stephen Hawking, now it seems like, regularly attended his dinners. Who the hell was not involved with Epstein in some capacity? It seems like everybody was. You can name a name and there's a probability, not a small probability, that they were involved with Epstein at some point in their life. Epstein has long been accused of sexually abusing underage girls. He also has purported connections to Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, and Prince Andrew, and moved in elite social circles in New York, Florida, and elsewhere. He's currently in jail after being arrested on 6 July. He pleaded not guilty several weeks ago. How old is this article? This article is more than 6 years old. So this article was written when he was still alive, it seems. Epstein's plans around his own progeny began to be talked about in the early 2000s, according to 3 sources contacted by the Times. How old is this article exactly? Epstein told scientists and businessmen about his ambitions to use his New Mexico ranch as a base where women would be inseminated with his sperm and would give birth to his babies. Mr. Epstein's goal was to have 20 women at a time impregnated at his 33,000 square feet Zorro Ranch in a tiny town outside San Fe, the Times said. Epstein's field of study was labeled transhumanism, but was an updated version of eugenics. Lawyer Alan Dershowitz, who defended Epstein in 2008 and has been named in a civil suit brought by Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre, told the Times he was appalled by the financier's interest in genetic manipulation, given the Nazis' use of eugenics in the 1930s. That's wow. Okay. He was planning to... All right. Insane. Well, let's continue. Oh my God, a Polish person is... I already spotted a Polish surname. A Polish person was involved in Epstein's plan to, impregnate all women and create a new... Yeah, it's a thing. That's a thing. Everyone speculated about whether these scientists were more interested in his views or more interested in his money. The answer is they were more interested in his money. I bet a lot of people were just interested in Epstein's money. According to the paper, Epstein's circle included the molecular engineer George Church, Murray Gell-Mann, who proposed the quark, the evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould, the neurologist and author Oliver Sacks, and the theoreticist physicist Frank Wilczek. Wilczek is 100% a Polish surname. Wilczek means wolfie, a wolf, a little wolfie. That is what Wilczek means. It's 100% a Polish surname. Okay? I am ashamed. On one occasion, Epstein held a lunch at Harvard's program for evolutionary dynamics, a program he had helped fund with a $6.5 million donation in 2011. He gave $20,000 to the Worldwide Transhumanist Association, a project that now operates as Humanity Plus. I guess Humanity Plus is when Epstein's seed is in every woman and they can give birth to the new superhuman race. The Harvard cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker said he considered Epstein as an intellectual imposter. Oh wow, what a shock. Okay. The biggest child trafficker in history being an intellectual imposter. Who could have guessed? Not me. He would abruptly change the subject, ADD style, dismiss an observation with an adolescent wisecrack. Pinker told the paper, the virtual reality pioneer Jaron Lanier said Epstein's ideas did not rise to science that could be subjected to critical analysis. So basically, he just had a fantasy of complete nonsense and nobody who was a real scientist treated him seriously. The scientific community like Trump and much of New York and Palm Beach society would sooner forget their association with Epstein. Humanity Plus Vice Chairman Ben Goretzel, whose salary was once paid by Epstein, told The Times, I have no desire to talk about Epstein right now. The stuff I'm reading about him in the papers is pretty disturbing and goes way beyond what I thought his misdoings and kinks were. Yeesh. Or yetch. Kinks. Okay. That's... what the fuck? Once again, I have to ask. This article was amended on August 2019 because Murray Gell-Mann proposed the existence of quarks rather than discovered them, as an earlier version said. It's okay. So we have just learned that I have just learned that Epstein wanted to create a super race of children with his own DNA and building fascist nation states to manage overpopulation. And he wined and dined the world's most powerful men, none of whom seemed to have an issue with these ideas. Yeah, you want to create a super race full of your DNA? Knock yourself out. Inviting them to his island and his ranch, and made sure they were surrounded by an endless supply of young girls. And I'm just not sure what we're supposed to do with that knowledge. Yeah, I'm not so sure either.